So today we're with PY, who is 23 years old and currently working at an education consulting company and waiting to hear back from law schools in the US. She is from Shenzhen Middle School and currently has degrees in psychology and human and organizational development from Vanderbilt University. And we'll be proceeding on with our questions. So the first question is, what is your biggest accomplishment so far? And take your time. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is the interview confidential?
The teacher would have access to the transcript.
Okay, understood. Cool. Just wondering. Well, I would say my biggest accomplishment so far is, I guess, my savings, because so like during COVID, I was living with friends' families, and it was just like a very unstable time because I'm Chinese. I couldn't return to China, and I didn't really have like a permanent location to live in the US. So during that time, I was like, oh, what can I do to better my life since I have so much free time? And I also just wanted something stable to make myself feel like more like emotionally and mentally stable. So I started working as a educational consultant, but mainly I was working with younger students at the time. But it gradually became a bigger part of my life as I proceeded into my junior and senior year in college. And that's when I realized that, actually making money isn't just like a very easy thing. Like, you have to actually work, you have to put in the hours and the energy, and the thoughts into it. So I guess that was a very transformative activity for me, because I just realized that I am becoming an adult and I want to be financially independent. So I was working in a law firm as a paralegal in New York, and I was paid okay salary, and I did that because I was trying to prepare myself for going to law school. So I decided that I want to have a good amount of savings for law school so that I don't have to depend on my parents to pay my tuition for me. And I am pretty good on my saving goals, and that I would say is my biggest accomplishment, because it's kind of like this long-term goal I set up for myself, and I was able to complete it prior to going to law school, if I'm still going.
Yeah, that sounds great. So the second question is not that related to the first, but it's, what do you remember best from your childhood or youth?
Childhood, youth, is that like prior to college, or?
Yeah,
okay.
Supposedly.
I would say happiness, even though I kind of know that I wasn't like very happy back then, just given the pressure of doing all these activities, taking all these tests, and getting to college. But still, I feel like that was a relatively peaceful time in my life, because I was surrounded by a great community, and I had great relationships with my classmates in Shenzhen Middle School. And overall, it was just a very, I think, healthy environment. And I did encounter a lot of challenges, family-wise and just, academically as well. But now looking back, I remember just being carefree and hopeful, and
is there
happy.
Any episodic memory, more particular?
Let me think.
Rather than happiness in general.
I see what you're saying. I guess I think what I remember the best was I guess going to Cornell. I went to this Cornell summer program, and that was a time when I was very immersed in nature.
Nature.
So yeah, it's in Ithaca. There's a lot of just lakes and hiking trails and things like that. So that memory feels very vivid, and color-wise very saturated. And it was also like my first time actually like living in America and enjoying American food. Cornell had really good food. So I remember sitting with this like temporary crush person like on like the Cornell slope. Like they had this like really nice spot, and we were just sitting there and talking and looking at the stars.
Wow, that sounds like some great memory to have. Describing America as nature. It seems like an interesting description. A bit different from my experience of summer schools in the U.S.
Where did you go?
I went to Brown, and I spent most of the time just because I was doing like 2 competitions concurrently, so I spent most of the time just like locked up in the library.
Okay.
Not very nature oriented. Okay. So on to the third question. So we have look at the present and the past. So what is your biggest and most important goal for the next 5 years into the future?
I would say graduating law school with, like satisfactory academic performance and getting into what we call like big law, which is firms usually with international offices, and do pretty high level work. That is the goal.
Do you hope to work in China or in the US or?
I would want to stay in the US because it's also just complicated because I do have my family here, but I would still want to be away for a while because I think America just has a more, I guess, like a freer environment in which I just identify like more with, if that makes sense. And I'm currently living with my parents, which is really great. However, I kind of like want to be more independent. So I would want to be in the US after graduating from law school. And also salary wise, you get paid way more if you're in the US. You might get global pay if you're in an international firm and like you're in like the China office, but usually you're doing the same amount of work, if not more, and getting paid less if you're like located in China. So
I see. Yeah, I'll definitely sympathize on. Although my future is a bit far away, but I see your point, of course. Yes, and on to the fourth one. So this is more personal. What are your hopes or plans for marriage and family?
Yeah, this is definitely a topic that has been on my mind, I guess. I would say I think ideally I would marry someone. However, I think it becomes really complicated if I want to marry a person of the same gender. Given that my parents my mom is actually quite accepting. However, I have not told my dad that I'm bi. So I was in a 3-year-long relationship, and I didn't tell him about it because I was dating a girl. So after I broke up, my mom was like, "Oh yay, like I'm glad. Like now you have a shot at like what she called a normal life." However, she was pretty supportive during the relationship. I think she just hid her feelings and her thoughts about about my relationship, and like only told me after I broke up. So I'm speaking in like a very unenthusiastic way because I'm just like, it's not something I really look forward to a lot. I think just given the societal pressure, you gotta have a marriage, have a family, all that, but I'm also aware that it can be very challenging if you're working as an attorney, and especially when you're trying to establish your career in the early stages. I've seen people who are very successful at it. However, I just feel like, it's a lot of work to build a relationship, and marriage can be complicated, and marriage fails like all the time. So it's like, do I really want to put so much time and effort into this? I'm currently, people say that you change when you're older. So at least at the current stage, I really don't think having children is a necessary goal for my life. They're expensive, they're a lot of work. There are just like many reasons to not have kids. However, I think maybe at some point in my life, I would be open to having kids, or I would like foster or adopt children, because we already have a lot of children. I don't think it's necessary. It's necessary for me to personally have like biological kids when there are so many kids without homes. And you know, kids are kids. I don't know, I feel like the ones I give birth to are not necessarily special in any ways. Like it's more about like family is more like what you build it to be. Like it doesn't necessarily require that biological tie, in my opinion. However, I am very much aware that my parents' generation, they have a totally different conception, like idea of like what a family should look like, and that in their definition, like family means like biological relation. So we will see. Long story short, we will see what happens.
I mean, now it's really like early adulthood, so yeah, and I'll agree with you that over the generations, antinatalism as theory and practice are both on the rise. And yeah, so let's go on to the fifth question, which is quite relevant to our discussion in particular. So if you would offer one piece of advice to high schoolers today, what would it be? And as a counseling person, you should probably would have some good advice. I would be eager to hear.
I guess for high schoolers today, like, are we talking high schoolers in general, like regardless of where they want to go for college, or are we talking like high schoolers who are going abroad, or whichever? Okay. I guess my advice is to, I think I didn't necessarily follow my own advice, but I think people should try to establish a sense of purpose outside of their academic achievements and their earning potentials and all these very materialistic things.
I knew it.
Because I think life is just more fun and meaningful when you're able to see beyond like what your parents tell you should do, and it's so hard to like differentiate your true self from these standards and just goals. But I think people are happier without it, and you don't need to create meanings by being a cog in a corporate machine. So,
but isn't like your biggest accomplishment also materialistic?
I guess it is, but like in a way it's not, because I think for me it's more like I want to be independent, and I know that my parents in the past made sacrifices to a degree for my education. I mean, I think I would have done the same if I were in their position, in their shoes, but I think to me it's more like becoming my own person instead of like someone that's affiliated to my parents, if that makes sense. And I can tell that they definitely have more respect for me, as in they see me as this independent individual instead of only their child, and like only see me as a child. After I've made my own money and like getting like just being able to like live an okay life, even if I'm not financially supported by them. And last year when I was living in New York, I had my own apartment, I was paying for my own food. Right now I'm living with them, so like, you know, I don't have to pay rent. But other than that, I just enjoy not having to like ask for money. And I think it has something to do with just like how I lived during COVID. Like I was very dependent on my friends' families, and they were even my own family. But just that dependency was just not ideal in my opinion. Like I was always on the edge. And like trying to make sure I'm not offending anyone or saying anything I shouldn't say or just being unpleasant. And I just got tired of being dependent on people in general.
I see.
And even if it's my own family, I just don't want that dependency anymore. I definitely had a great time during COVID, like living with friends, families, and experiencing different parts of the state. But still, like, I think one of the biggest takeaway is to be to be independent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this question of dependency, actually, I'm recently reading a book by Martha Nussbaum. She's the greatest living female philosopher, and she talks a lot about the possible value and virtues that can come out of emotional/moral dependence, as she calls it. And it's definitely an issue that we should be concerned about. And as a psychology major, you might have guessed the intention of this interview for young adults of Eric Kinson's psychosocial stages. Intimacy, isolation. Wait, should I say that I probably shouldn't say it in the interview. Let's just cut that out.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. The goal of this interview is still mysterious. And could you give like more concrete advice? Because being intrinsically motivated, of course, is something that everyone should strive for, but what would be some like change in habit that you would recommend to become a person who's more intrinsically motivated?
Yeah. I guess from my observation of, I think if I were in your shoes, like doing this interview, hearing the advice I'm about to give, I'll be like, come on, old person. But like, get off your phone, ? Because I feel like people nowadays, students nowadays are spending like so much time just in the digital space. And obviously I'm not entirely sure, if they're spending a lot of time with their friends, like in person and just connecting in that way. But I do feel like the digital world can be very draining and people put on a persona instead of showing who they truly are. I'm not saying that like don't use social media, period. Like I definitely think there's value to that, and you stay connected with people who are really far away from you, and there are just many benefits of using it. But I think it shouldn't be overused, and people should like try to like make more in-person connections and spend more time just like talking to each other instead of being like on their phone and posting things. And I don't know what app you guys are using right now, but it used to be like TikTok and like Redbook and things like that.
Not me in particular.
Okay.
I don't even have social media on my computer, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but how does that connect to intrinsic motivation, though?
I guess like when you were asking for advice, the two advice are not necessarily interconnected, if that makes sense. They're just like advice I have like on my mind, but also like, do people really listen to advice anyways? I think people just like live life and then they find that, oh, this is not working, so let me try something else. And I don't know, like I guess I never listened
to an extent, people sometimes they look for advice for confirmation bias, like advice that like you should do what you're already doing, and they feel all smug up about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, on to the next one. What is your biggest regret so far?
Biggest regret? Ooh. I guess the biggest regret would be, it's not necessarily a regret. It feels like a regret, but like I don't regret anything I've done in this situation. So I chose to like break up with my girlfriend of 3 years. And I think I made that decision thinking that we will still be friends. However, I think it's just kind of hard for people to break up and be friends. So I'm not necessarily saying that I regret breaking up, because I think making international long distance work is just very hard. And she has a really great job in a stable location, so there's no reason for her to like move around and things like that. And I don't even know where I'm going for law school, so I think based on all of that, based on the situation we're in, I think breaking up is the rational choice. However, I guess I didn't take other factors into consideration when I was initiating the breakup and all that. And I wish I treated her better when we were in the relationship. Exactly how, maybe buy her more treats and spending more time with her, although we already spent a lot of time together. So I guess like the regret is it really a regret? It feels like one, but it isn't, because I know that we both agree that it was the right decision. So I guess the regret would be not treating her even better when we were in a relationship, even though I don't think I was mistreating her in any ways. But just back in the days, I didn't know that, oh, this is all going to come to an end. So I treated her normally. But like now looking back, I'm just like, oh, if I knew that there's a end date on this relationship, I would have totally just give my all and just be the best possible person for her. Like, you know.
I don't think. Yeah. I mean, regret doesn't necessarily have to be like I regret, but it's more like the situation is regretful, that it's more like tragic kind of regret.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. On to the 7th then.
Okay.
Who has the largest impact on you besides your parents?
The largest impact on me?
Yes, so beliefs, worldview, career, just anything.
I think it's really hard to pinpoint like one person who has the largest impact on me. Because I definitely feel like there are several people that serve very important purposes in my life, but I don't think I'm super like easily influenced by them. I guess if I have to pick, it would be my friend Adam. So when I was applying to colleges, he was my counselor. Yeah, he was my counselor. But then he returned to the US and he started law school. And I was living with him for a while during COVID, and we just had a lot of conversations about law school, and I think that's what like drove me to look into this profession. And we always keep in touch with each other. It doesn't matter where we are. So like I think for my freshman year and sophomore year, I was in the US while he was in China, and we called like on a weekly basis just as friends. And then we were both in the US, and he like made time for me to just like chat with him even during law school. He graduated last year, so I was in New York and working in the law firm, and he was already kind of in the legal profession given the internships he was doing. So I was asking him for advice, you know, like how to deal with partners and how to like manage these relationships and expectations. And he was also very helpful when I was preparing for the LSAT, which is the law school admission test, I think. And he also helped tremendously during my actual law school application process by reading my essays and telling me what he thinks and things like that. So yeah, I would say he is the person that impacted me the most, besides my parents.
I think you talked about him on the airport.
Yeah.
And stuff. Okay, great. The next one is more like I mean, all of these questions are kind of soul searching, but this one is a bit. So I'm just going to read the question. So what's one song or genre of songs that you play often? And what message or emotion do you think that it or they convey?
I wish I have my phone right now so I can open my... I don't have Spotify anymore. Like, what... I guess like I watch anime, or I used to watch a lot of anime, and I like listening to the openings and just like the music in the animes. And I think the message it usually convey is like this like wait, actually scratch that. I want to talk about a different genre.
Okay.
It's like I don't know how to describe it though. Like old like American songs, but they're like not like super old. I'm talking like 2010, something like that. And they're usually about like angsty teenagers doing something.
Okay.
And I think the message is that these... Okay. It's just hard for me to verbalize it, but I think I listen to them and find it comforting because it reminds me that a lot of people don't have it figured out. So it's also okay for me to not have everything figured out in this stage of life. I also like it because I think even though I'm actually like 23 years old, sometimes I still feel like my teenage self, if that makes sense. So just like listening to that makes me feel like that, oh, there's like still a lot of like mystery to life that I am going to uncover, and that it is okay to not know the full plan now. Like you still have time and you're still in this stage in life in which you're exploring, experimenting, and trying out new things. That's the best I can verbalize it.
Do you usually listen like to lyrics?
I do. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't. I do. Well, it depends on what song, like what type of song as well. Like when I'm listening to Japanese music, I'm less able to understand what it means. But if it's in English, then yeah. And I also listen very occasionally to like French songs. Like I can't even name them because I can't pronounce the title of the songs. But if it's English and Chinese, then yes. Japanese sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, great. And the ninth one would also be one of these kind of like mysterious questions that is somehow able to reveal a person's personality. If you have a week during which you're free from all obligations, necessarily free, like you cannot do work, basically.
Okay.
How would you spend it?
Oh, I would spend it fishing, 100%. Fishing. I would really want to be in the US for this 1 week. But I would just like go early morning and fish until it's dark and go home and cook the fish and eat it.
Wow. Interesting. That sounds like I have no personal connection to fishing, but that sounds like it would be a fun way to spend a week.
Thank you. I've actually done it. So after I graduated, after I finished taking the LSAT, I just like started fishing like every day. So my ex-girlfriend would like drop me off at the fish pond, and she would pick me up after work, and I just go home and process the fish. I think that's the happiest time I've ever had, just fishing. It's just so fun, and there's no pressure. I do get really frustrated when I don't catch anything, but I've learned to not take it personally.
Personally, from the fish.
Yep.
Okay.
Sometimes they just don't want to die. So
Yeah, that is a problem. Okay. And yeah, we're on to our last one. So, what is a cause or social issue that you really care about?
I guess I used to really care about, this is not like very on the societal level, but I used to care so much about housing issue for international students when I was struggling with housing instability in the US. I guess I just kind of hated that international students can be used as like cash cows for the universities. And when we're actually in a situation, then there's no guarantee that we even have a roof over our head, and that the school just doesn't really seem to care. Because I think I went through this very angry stage during college, like knowing that as an international student, you're not only facing social exclusion, but also institutionally, there's no guarantee for your safety sometimes. Like Vandy was like, oh, all right, like now everyone goes home and that's it. Like there's no follow-up on how, as international students, we should like navigate a situation, where to live, things like that. Oh, and they also like charge people a very hefty fee for living during, like in the dorm during COVID. So that's something I cared a lot about, and I started, I wouldn't say it's a movement, but I was working for the International Student Council, so I reached out to all the major school orgs and had them like endorse this letter I wrote together with other coworkers, just kind of telling the school, hey, like international students are facing a lot right now, especially with housing, because if you return to China, there's no guarantee you can come back and finish your education, given the travel restrictions at the time, and that the housing options you're offering us are not affordable for a lot of students. And it was actually kind of a success because they waived housing fee for all international students for 2 years, like during COVID. And I didn't even use it because I was living with friends. I just like preferred living with other people's family and my friends during COVID. But I guess I cared a lot about it, but it was more like I just got so mad at the school for being so like shitty. So like I wasn't even acting with the purpose that change will happen, or like I didn't even expect change to happen, because I knew that their goal was to make money, especially off of international students. So I wasn't expecting change. It was low-key like a temper tantrum, but like completed in like an organized way. However, as I became far removed from that situation, I think my desire to ensure that this is an ongoing guarantee like disappeared. And also right now, I think COVID isn't posing as big of a threat as before, as in like, you know, you have the option to travel home and still return to the US to continue your education. I also cared a lot about the social exclusion aspect of, I guess, being international in an American university. And I find myself having these like confrontational talks sometimes with people, such as I was describing the situation earlier, right? I was in a group with one other international student, and the rest of the group, the 7 other members are Americans, and they wrote this analysis of our group saying that, oh, we are so inclusive, and like, you know, everyone's free to share their opinions and we value them equally, which is just wildly untrue. And I said, hey guys, this is just not the case. Such as like exhibit number 1, look at this one interaction we had that was recorded by another group. You know, we were trying to speak up, but we were got off by we were just interrupted, and you can see from the clip that, you know, if it's coming from us, the interruption happens every time. Like every time we spoke up, it was interrupted. And the women in the group, about like half the time they spoke up, they were interrupted. But when we were talking like straight white men in the group, they were never interrupted by anyone. They just like, they can go on, and no one would like stop them. But like, I was just very angry at the people who pretend to not see the issue. Like, as in like, it's fine that we were interrupted, whatever, but it just really angered me when people were pretending that things are good. And I think sometimes instead of trying to address the issue, I'm more driven to like reveal people's hypocrisy. But I guess these are just like pieces of things I cared about, and it's not very societal, if that makes sense. It was very confined. It was mostly confined to a college campus, even though I think we see the same type of exclusion in American society.
Well,
I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. I think like being able to start a movement with substantial result is something that's really impressive, and I think it's something that colleges really like hope their students can do, or at least like supposedly. And the application process hope to see in the student. And I think, you know, you're an exemplar for that, for us to learn as high schoolers. And thank you for the interview.
Of course. Thank you, Kevin, for the very fun interview. I enjoyed it.
Okay.